VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. We are 4 days away from the annual trip to Soldier Field, where the 8-2 Vikings will take on the suddenly crappy 4-6 Bears. It wasn't long ago that the Bears were 4-2, and we looked at the standings in the NFC North, and we're like, "Wowzers, this thing is going to be a gauntlet." But here we are; they've lost four straight, and I haven't watched any Bears games by happenstance over the last month, mainly because I think I've gone to two of the Vikings games, and I haven't been able to see with my own eyes their downfall. But I'm going to talk with Josh Fry today. We're going to go through the remainder of the 7 game schedules, and there's no better point to start than this week 12 matchup. Josh, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, dude. I'm excited for this Bears matchup. I think it's going to be a nice little NFC North test for the Vikings. We haven't gotten a chance to see too many of those yet this season, and it always puts a little bit extra juice in me to see the Vikings going up against one of their rivals. So it'll be a fun time.
The first NFC North test was halfway glorious. In fact, 7.5 weeks ago was the last time that the Vikings looked dominant. The first half of
Mhm.
the Packers game, they were up 28-0. Jalen Naylor muffed a punt, and they haven't been dominant since. And then they had a really good showing against the Lions, couldn't pull it out. I'll tell you right out of the gate that the Vikings, I'm paranoid about this game. The Vikings haven't lost at Soldier Field in 5 years, and they're architects of sloppy wins there. Go figure. And I think that their luck's going to run out this week, not because the Bears are fantastic. I think there's going to be something that ensures the Bears win because they're due for it, and they got the new offensive coordinator. But I hope you tell me something different. What say you about this matchup?
Yeah, so I think prior to the season when we were going through the schedule, I picked the Bears to win this game.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we've seen 10 games of the season unfold, I do think that there is a perfect recipe for the Vikings to win this matchup, and it revolves entirely around Caleb Williams and the Bears offensive line that has been absolutely putrid this season. Caleb Williams has been sacked more times than any quarterback in the NFL. And there's a magic number that if the Vikings hit, they're probably going to win this game. When Caleb Williams is sacked three or fewer times this season, the Bears are 4-2. When he's sacked four or more times, they're 0-4. So if the Vikings just get to him four times, they're probably going to win. And Caleb Williams, it's been the classic rookie QB story where he does some good things, but then he kind of makes these boneheaded moves. He holds onto the ball a little bit too long. He's going back to that hero ball at USC where he just kind of trying to make plays out of nothing instead of just taking the safe route and moving on to the next down. So I think that Brian Flores, with his intricate blitzing scheme, with how good this defense has played over the past few weeks, I think the Vikings are going to dial something up and they're going to confuse Caleb Williams, put some pressure on him, and I think they're going to go into Soldier Field and win this week.
Okay, that's what I needed to hear. I really,
Yeah.
I really like that one. Before we get into the following game, a 3 game homestand, which is pretty fantastic. You really liked or like Caleb coming out of the draft. Um, are you going to revise that now because he's trapped on the Bears? Or what say you? Because I think we all know that Caleb can be good. Well, it happened in Chicago in general, not just this week.
I still think it can happen in Chicago, mainly just because they have so many weapons on that roster now between Adunze, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet's solid at the tight end spot. I just think they need to go after and really fix this offensive line this offseason
Hmm.
and bring in an offensive minded head coach and not somebody who's going to settle for a 46-yard field goal on second down against the Green Bay Packers instead of trying to go get more yards. That was just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I think they do a couple different things and just shake up not only the coaching staff, but that offensive line. I think Caleb Williams definitely has a path to success in Chicago, unfortunately.
Yeah, the offensive line priority. They should have the right general manager to do that because Poles was an offensive lineman himself. In fact, one of my dirty little secrets is I wanted Poles to be the Vikings general manager before I knew anything about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah because I thought he would be guaranteed to fix the offensive line since he played the damn position in college. I think he would play with Matt Ryan on a Boston College team, if I'm not mistaken. All right,
Looks
I
like
have
it.
the Vikings losing 20-14 to the Bears because I've just watched too many Soldier Field games in my life. I don't really have a good analytical reason. I just have this feeling in my gut they're going to lose. All right, what about the Cardinals the following week? A game that will not be flexed in Monday Night Football. How are you feeling about that one?
I think I really do like this Cardinals team, and this
Mm-hmm.
feels like a classic trap situation for the Vikings coming off a really emotional, hopefully win against the Chicago Bears and looking ahead to a rematch or the revenge game of Kirk Cousins as they come into US Bank the following week. I think that this is just a nice, it's a kind of classic trap game sandwich between two emotional games for the Vikings where they might be looking ahead a little bit. And with the Cardinals not only leading the NFC West, but they're looking pretty damn good right now as they're doing it. I think Kyler Murray's been fantastic for them at QB. And he's a guy that he knows what it takes to beat defenses that give him pressure too. So
Mm-hmm.
that kind of gives me some hesitancy to pick the Vikings here, and I think that the Cardinals are going to go in the U.S. Bank and win 2 weeks from now.
And I think I know how you got here because when you do this exercise, you have to find some losses
Yeah,
because they're probably not going to run the table and be 15-2. My God, that'd be glorious. So I think we just flipped outcomes here. I have the paranoid, like just stereotypical feeling about Soldier Field are going to lose. I think they'll lose that one, but then get back on track against the Cardinals, mainly because the Cardinals rank 12th in offensive EPA per play and then 24th in defense. They and the Falcons kind of do the Spider-Man meme per those metrics. So I think that as a bounce back effort, they will beat the Cardinals. And actually, that was one of my miniature claims to fame before the season started when I posted my predictions for the NFL was that the Cardinals would reach the postseason and the Cowboys would. I thought the Cowboys would be about 8-9, mainly because I didn't foresee Prescott getting hurt. But the Cardinals, if you have a quarterback that you trust in Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison is starting to get there. And then you also have a defensive head coach. I always like that blend, and I thought that would maybe get them to 9-8 or 10-7 to make the postseason. And it appears they're going to do that so long as the 49ers aren't resurrected. Notably, those two teams, the 49ers and Seahawks, play week 18, which could be for all the marbles.
it's going to be really crazy in the NFC West. Those four teams are separated
Yeah,
by one game.
it's really weird. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, even we saw firsthand playing the Rams that they're not some, mediocre team. They can
Yeah.
play really well, especially if their somewhat anonymous defense continues its decent clip. All right, so we split there on the Falcons game. I'm going to take the lead here for the very simple reason of this. I trust Brian Flores to scheme against Kirk Cousins more so than I trust Kirk Cousins to scheme against Brian Flores. And I like Kirk Cousins, but I think that it might be too grand of a stage and these two teams could meet again in the postseason, so this could be a precursor. I think the Vikings win that game by a touchdown or so, and they end up winning two at home in a row, which would get them to 10-3, I believe. What say you about that Falcons game?
Yeah, I kind of feel the exact same way. I've watched a couple Falcons games, and while the offense sometimes moves the ball really well, they still there's those Kirk Cousins moments, man. We saw him for 6 years in Minnesota where he makes these really great plays, but then when it really matters, he just continues to dunk the ball off. And we saw that it was a Saints game where it was like 4th and 4, whatever. He throws behind the sticks and they lose
Mm-hmm.
that game. And it's just I just don't trust this team to be super great come playoff time, and especially against a great defense like Brian Flores' unit. I think they're going to struggle on that side of the ball, and I just don't trust their defense either. So I think that the Vikings are going to win.
And quietly, our good friend Yannick Eckhart has done a wonderful job lifting it up this week. The Vikings' run defense is, like, by franchise standards, historically good. And we don't care or we don't talk about it that much. Like, in terms of yards allowed, now a lot of teams threw against the Vikings in September and October because they were trailing on the scoreboard. But even without a nose tackle, the Vikings' rush defense is really, really good. So if they can neutralize Bijan Robinson in that game and force Kirk to beat you, they still got playmakers to do it. But I'll rest in my laurels in saying that I think Flores is a more trustworthy commodity in a big game than Cousins is. Although I've seen Cousins do some marvelous things in big games. I have the next one, Monday Night Football, which I hope they don't flex out. I think they'll win this game too because I'll never have this version of the Bears beating the Vikings twice. And so when I did this exercise, I was like, God, I'm getting really optimistic here, more so than I usually would. But I think they get that rotten taste out of their mouth this weekend, or they will lose this weekend and then win these three home games. I basically see the pendulum of last year at home. They went 2-6 in that damn building. I mathematically they need to right the ship there. So I have them, believe it or not, winning 3 straight games at home. I know it is a month in advance here, but tell me about Vikings Bears on Monday Night Football.
I mean, I feel like I've already given this speech when we first talked about the earlier game, but again, I think that this Vikings team just has the exact recipe to beat the Chicago Bears team this
Hmm.
season. Yes, it's probably going to be the usual sloppy like 17-10 victory or whatever, but I just think that this Vikings defense is going to put Caleb Williams in absolute hell in these two matchups, and yeah, I have the Vikings winning this one as well to go 11-3, I believe.
Yeah, we both would be situated there, which would be so fantastic. Have you, I don't know how much time you spend on Twitter or Blue Sky, mainly on Twitter. There's been a lot of pessimism this week about the Vikings, and I just
Yeah,
can't understand it. Like I've tried to look at it objectively and say, all right, well, yeah, they didn't beat the doors, blow the doors off the Titans. They certainly didn't do that against the Jags, and then the Colts game wasn't flawless. But you got 3 wins against AFC teams that you're not really familiar with. You are 8-2 in a season when you were supposed to be 7-10 at best, or 8-9 maybe. And I just can't understand like some prominent social media voices poo-pooing on the Vikings. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
yeah, I feel like the biggest complaint that I've seen from Vikings fans is just that they're playing boring football. And it's like, isn't that exactly what we complained about on the opposite spectrum last year, where the Vikings were just playing absolute chaos football the entire time? And I just don't know. Did anybody watch the Bears and Packers game last week? That it was a close score, but it wasn't exciting by any means. Like both quarterbacks were throwing the ball all over the place, and it was really sloppy football. Like I don't know. I feel like the Vikings are piling up wins. Boring football is exactly what you want to play in November, December, and then maybe once you get to January, that's when you pull out some of the trick plays and get some of the heroics out. Like not
Mm-hmm.
every team is going to play like the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. So I don't understand that gripe either. And I'm happy that they're playing boring football for once, and it's not something where we have to stress every single week, every single play about what's going to happen.
So yeah, to reiterate, I've tried to figure out why, like because it's really mind-boggling. The 8-2 team with Sam Darnold, without Christian Darrisaw, without JJ McCarthy, without Mekhi Blackman, your other rookie cornerback died. Why would you hold the Vikings to this Super Bowl standard in 2024? And I've had like somewhat intense arguments on Twitter about this. It's that the other side, I guess you'd say, is like we have to hold them to a standard, a Super Bowl standard. This is the problem with Vikings fans. They're content with getting to the playoffs and losing. Well, if they were 2-8, all of those arguments would make sense. If Sam Darnold was the only solution that you had at quarterback, there was no such thing as JJ McCarthy, I would be right there with them, kind of thinking about like, yeah, Darnold's your fix, and you think this is going to end up in a Super Bowl? Not going to happen. But I don't understand. They've already hedged their bet with their franchise quarterback and McCarthy waiting to recover from his meniscus. You have Sam Darnold, who nobody was like, hey, we're going to go win the Super Bowl. But suddenly they're 8-2, and we've decided some that nope, this isn't good enough. You got to beat the Titans by 17, my friend, not just by 10. I don't understand how we got here.
And I feel like those same exact people are the people that were complaining when the Vikings signed Sam Darnold to be their starting quarterback this season. So I don't know. You just can't win with a lot of
Can't
people
please
these
them
days.
all.
So yeah.
All right, the following week, I think this is got like bad feeling in my bones show. They're going to Seattle. They've lost 5 or 6 straight there. They haven't won in that damn building since 2006. I have to have some losses. I don't think the Vikings are going to end up some sweet shit like 14-3. So I have them losing in Seattle, and I don't have a good reason for it because Seahawks are kind of Jekyll and Hyde, where I think they started the season 3-0, and we're like, wow, look at Geno, and
Yep.
then by the season's midpoint they were mid. So I think the Vikings will probably be humbled here after 3 straight home games, which would get them to what do we maybe 11?
11-4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
11-3 or 11-4. We'll have to retabulate that, but this is the game I see them losing.
Yeah, I'm on the exact same page. I hate
Mhm.
this matchup, and especially this late in going to Seattle. Like you said, this Seattle team has not been anything super special at all this
Mhm.
season. But man, that win last weekend was damn impressive. That comeback over San Francisco. Gino just finds a way to win these games, and it's just
Mhm.
it scares me for the Vikings' sake going into this. And like you look at the Seattle team, like I said, nothing special, but especially you compare some of the stat lines like Geno Smith compared to Patrick Mahomes. I think he has like just basically the same amount of yards, same
Mhm.
amount of touchdowns, same amount of interceptions. And it's basically an identical stat sheet. And nobody really talks about it because it's Seattle and they're not supposed to be good. They're not one of the sexy teams, but they're 5-5 and they're fully in the mix in the NFC West. I can't take this team lightly, and I think the Vikings are gonna get humbled in this one as well.
I think they are, quote, nothing special, end quote, because they're not consistent. Like, I
Yeah,
think that's the only thing that makes sense because Metcalf, Ken Walker's fantastic. Jackson Smith-Njigba has finally emerged as the guy who we thought he was. They have a defense first head coach, one of those mixtures I was talking about that I like. Like, the only thing I think that separates us from saying, hey, these guys can do something special and get to the wild card round is that they never put it together consistently. They might be a victim of, they beat the easy teams, the bad teams, and then outside of last week, they struggle. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, I have that one as a loss. And then it's real tricky to try to forecast these next two because I don't know if the Lions will be playing for anything. I think the Lions would even play their guys if they were 15-1 or whatever it was.
they might.
So yeah, I will take regrettably, man. I'm gonna let you start here. I gotta I'm starting to backtrack a little bit. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. No, I think the Vikings definitely showed that they are plenty capable of not only hanging, but dominating this Green Bay Packers team. And
Hmm.
what was it, week 5, week 6, one of those two? I can't remember exactly off the top of my head
That
what
one
week it
was
was,
all the
but
way back before London. It was week 4.
week 4, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. But yeah, like you said, they were up 28-0 at one point, and then the wheels just started coming off. And as long as the Vikings don't do some of the stupid shit that they did in the second half with turnovers and everything, and then the defense just all of a sudden deciding to disappear, like Jordan Love has been an absolute turnover machine this year, and Brian Flores should feast on that, especially inside US Bank Stadium where you have that home crowd roaring, and you're going to be we're both predicting like 11-4 at this point, fully in
Hmm.
the mix for not only a wild card spot, but potentially still in the hunt for the NFC North division. And this Packers team is going to be in the hunt as well. So should be a very pivotal game. You have to win this game at home if you're Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings. So I have the Vikings winning this one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, but then I got a little sketchy that I was predicting too many wins for this team.
Yeah,
You talked about the turnover machine, Jordan Love, also the turnover machine that nobody cares. Like, hey,
yeah.
that's what he does. And
He's Brett
uh,
Favre. It's okay.
yeah, yeah. And then with Darnold, I think he has one more turnover, and we're all like, I don't know.
Well,
Uh,
Jordan Love has one more interception than Sam
yeah,
Darnold, and all we've talked about for the past 2 weeks is Sam Darnold's interceptions.
yeah. With I think he gets a pass because he is a Packers quarterback. Another thing that I keep pounding home in writings and then anybody that will listen is we need to be more concerned about the Packers catching us for second place than the Vikings catching the Lions for first
Yeah,
place because the Lions defense has suddenly caught up with them and they are that balanced in the top 4, top 3 of both offense and defense. I do believe in the Lions now, like sorry to say. So I want to keep the Packers at bay, and if we catch the Lions, great. I just don't expect it to happen. So on this Monday Night Football game, I hardly ever pick the Vikings to beat the Packers twice in the same season. But they're also due after last year's horrendous outing with Jaron Hall at quarterback. They're due to beat the Packers at home. So I will take them. And then I'm going to operate under the pretense that the Week 18 game will mean something. And therefore, again, because it's in Detroit, the Vikings will lose to the Lions and get them to 12-5. Now, I keep also thinking that 11-6 feels like a more just record for these Vikings, the way that they've played in the past month, the way that they started hot. But when I do this exercise, it gets me to 12-5, and I'll take it. What say you for the last game of the season? Does it mean anything, and who wins it?
yeah. I mean, I haven't gone through the Lions schedule by any means for the rest of the year, but I mean, I don't think they're going to be 15-1 coming into this game. I think there is another point in the season where they're going to slip up, and with the Eagles looking as good as they've looked over the past few weeks at 8 and
Mm-hmm.
2, there's pretty good chance that this means something at least for the number 1 seed, if not for an NFC North title at this point. So I think that the Lions and Vikings will be playing starters in this one, but at the end of the day, the Lions are just a better team.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw it that first matchup. The Lions are just capable of making one more play down the stretch than the Minnesota Vikings are at this point. And I think, like you said, with that defense being as good as it is, the offense just absolutely humming. That game last weekend was just ridiculous from the Lions offense. It looked like they were playing at FCS school out there than the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I do think that the Lions are going to win that game and win the NFC North, probably be the number 1 seed.
I think that was 50% of the Vikings fan anti-Viking sentiment was the Lions
Probably.
beat the
Yeah.
shit out of the Jaguars when we only could get field goals against them, and we're like, hey, look at that. But truth be told, the Vikings should be about 2 or 3 years behind the Lions in terms
Yeah.
of the product they're building. Not because the Lions are this big historical phenom. It's that this is when they're supposed to win the Super Bowl per the schedule of their rebuild. And the Vikings have McCarthy in waiting. So we should, the upside of Vikings football will be in about 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we are viewing the Vikings like we do the Lions right now. Like, God, they've built this thing great. Like, and that, I think that is the goal. I have one more question to ask before we log off for the day. My Super Bowl prediction, which I still feel a little good about, was this. Let's see, who did I pick? I think it was the Cincinnati Bengals over the Philadelphia Eagles. Certainly those two teams. I think I picked the Bengals to win it. Eagles have effectuated at least what I think has been a pretty awesome turnaround from the first month of the season. Bengals reside in a weak AFC wildcard chase. Are the Bengals still capable of getting in the mix? I want to know.
Man, this offense tells me that it is capable. Like Joe Burrow leading the league in passing yards, passing touchdowns, only thrown like 4 interceptions all season. He's been flawless. Like this offense is still really damn good. It's just
Mm-hmm.
the defense is horrible. And especially in an AFC North where you're playing a lot of outdoor football down the stretch of the season. You got the Ravens, you got the Steelers who are both looking fantastic. I just don't see it for Cincinnati this year. I just think it's going to be one of those years where inexplicably they go like 7-10 and miss the playoffs, and they end up going into the offseason. I quietly think this is a landing spot for Brian Flores if he's able to
Mm-hmm.
get
I
back
have
to the
that
head
too.
coach. Yeah,
Yep.
I think that would be an absolutely fantastic fit in Cincinnati between having Joe Burrow lead that offense, and then you
Mm-hmm.
just have to focus on rebuilding that defense. Just get a decent offensive mind in there to kind of scheme towards Joe Burrow's strengths, and I think Cincinnati can be right back in the mix.
Yeah, I have when I did a Flores landing spots articles, I had the Bears because he Flores feels like a type of guy that would be a Chicago Bears coach, like
Yeah.
tough, hard-nosed. Yep. I had the Cowboys on there. I don't know if Flores is a sexy enough splash for Jerry Jones, but I included them. The Browns, I think they're probably going to say we tried the offense first head coach thing. We're going to go back to a proven commodity. But I also settled on the Bengals because it will be a situation tailor made in heaven for a quarter for anybody as a coach to walk into. And if you know that Joe Burrow is the de facto offensive coordinator, Flores might even bring Wes Phillips with him.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have that Houston Texans model where we have that diversity of a defense first head coach when you already know that you have the franchise quarterback. I think that arrangement can hum. All right, who's going to be the first overall pick in the draft?
First overall pick, I still think it's Travis Hunter. This
Okay.
dude's just absolutely incredible, and I think the quarterbacks are good, but I just think Travis Hunter is something we've never really seen before outside of maybe Deion Sanders, and that guy
Mm-hmm.
was pretty damn good in the NFL. So I think that he's going to be the number one pick just because he can play literally anywhere on the field, offense or defense. Throw him
Will
into a spot, and he's going to be good.
will a team play him at both positions?
I think, especially early on, they'll probably focus more on the cornerback just
Okay.
because that's going to be probably where he's valued more for a team drafting towards the top end of the draft at this point. But I think you throw him in and like throw him in the slot, have him run a couple go routes.
It'll be just
I
like
think
Dion.
yeah, exactly. Exactly
Exactly
like
like
Dion.
Dion.
I think he can play exactly like Dion in the NFL, and I think he's going to be really damn good when he does. So I think it'd be cornerback more focused to start the year, but maybe down the stretch, you start playing some games, you throw a little funky lineups out there, and I think he can definitely play on the offensive end as well.
And the most important aspect of this, my friend, is if you play in a fantasy football league where you have individual defensive players, would you start Travis Hunter as your defensive back, and then if he gets offensive touchdowns, you rack them up?
I think that's the way to go. I probably wouldn't start him at wide receiver just because I don't know how many
Yeah.
reps he's going to get at that spot. But you get him at defensive back and he's catching like 3 catches for 50 yards. That's just extra points for you.
Yep. Yeah, I've been wondering that. The same Yannick Eckhart asked me if you could start him at two spots, and I was like, you probably can't start him at both, but you
Yeah,
can you can put him at one, and then the points will tabulate like a slot machine. All right, Josh, I think we both ended up at 12-5, correct?
that's where I ended up. So yeah,
We'll take it, and that will assuredly punch their ticket to the postseason, and then probably draw the number of the Falcons, Cardinals, 49ers, or Eagles.
a Falcons playoff game would just be absolutely fantastic. I honestly hope it's that just for fun because Vikings Falcons, two cursed franchises. You got the Kirk Cousins rematch, probably going into his house to try to take him
Hmm.
down and just get some revenge and just hopefully get some revenge for all the bullshit that he did in the playoffs for the Vikings over the years. So I think it'll be a fun game. I hope
And
it's that one.
it's also right now by the numbers like the most likely matchup. So this isn't
Yeah.
some big, hey, what if? It's kind of like if you assume they get out of their funk, although they have a tough matchup against the Chargers after the bye, and then they play the Vikings. They gotta put off the footsteps of the Saints and the Buccaneers, thanks to their recent loss. All right, my friend, we'll talk to you in a week, okay?
Sounds good. See you then.
Yeah, take it easy.